Hello and welcome to this special broadcast from Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, a country which has now been caught in crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah. Remember, the same day last year when Israel started its war against Hamas, it appeared as if things will get calmer within a couple of months. But now this particular conflict has engulfed most parts of the Middle East. The situation here in Lebanon is also very serious. On the southern side of the Lebanon, the ground forces of Israel are engaged in combat with Hezbollah fighters. On the north, Israel has been striking through aerial bombardments on the strongholds of Hezbollah. And then there are lakhs of people who have got displaced. People from the southern part of Beirut or Lebanon are moving towards the city center in Beirut and have been displaced, lodging themselves in shelter areas or makeshift refugee camps in government schools. Those who want to escape this region are moving towards Syria. But Israel has also bombed the link road or the border area between Syria and Lebanon, making many of these people stranded on the highways. Aerial bombardments continue after sunset, and that is what brings a lot of tension for these people in the city who have nothing to do with this conflict. But they also say that they need a force to thwart the attempts of the Israelis who have in the past occupied their land. Let's first take a look at what happened since October 7, 2023 last year. That's how Hamas attack took everyone by surprise in Israel. And after that, this entire region was caught on fire. Israel vowed to avenge the attack, and then it started its attack not only in Hamas in Gaza, but also towards Houthis in Yemen, Shiite militias in Iraq, and also in Syria and Lebanon, where Hezbollah is fighting against it.
A year since militant group Hamas launched an unprecedented cross-border attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, West Asia is on the brink of an all-out war. Hamas's assault various kibbutz at the Nova Music Festival killed 1,200 Israelis and took 250 hostages. Israel's subsequent retaliation triggered a year of devastation and turmoil across the region and the world. "365 days since the attack, 105 hostages have returned to Israel, while 72 have been killed.
This is my father. He's still in captivity, and we don't know anything about him since then.
Including 3 killed accidentally by IDF forces operating in Gaza. 97 hostages continue to remain in Hamas's captivity in Gaza even today.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות.
A week after Hamas's onslaught left Israel's defenses in shambles, Israeli forces began bombing Gaza and limited ground operations into the region. Followed by a full-scale invasion into the region on 27th October. Over 2/3 of Gaza has been destroyed since the war, including schools, hospitals, and more. The WHO reports that only 12 of 36 hospitals in Gaza remain partially functional, leaving over 2 million Palestinians without access to proper health care. After a month of fighting, Israel and Hamas agreed to a Qatar and Egypt-brokered temporary ceasefire on 24th November, the only ceasefire in the year-long war. During the 6-day truce, 105 hostages and 240 Palestinian detainees were freed, while several humanitarian aid trucks entered the strip. The conflict resumed on 1st December with the IDF launching their first big ground assault on southern Gaza on the outskirts of Khan Yunis. Since the war began, Iran-backed Yemeni militant group the Houthis' attack on commercial shipping vessels has tormented global trade, restricting crucial shipping routes passing through West Asia. While the US, UK, among other allies have retaliated against the Houthis, the Indian Navy played a significant role in rescuing numerous ships struck by Houthi missiles. Roughly 6 months into the war, the region saw its first major escalation as tensions grew between Israel and Iran after Tel Aviv struck an Iranian embassy in Syria. Iran rained down missiles on Israel, its first attack targeting Israel directly from its own soil. Israel responded to the attack by striking an Iranian airbase. Between May and July, U.S. State Secretary Blinken continued his shuttle diplomacy, along with mediators Qatar and Egypt, to get Israel and Hamas on the negotiation table. While Hamas agreed to a truce proposal in early May, raising hopes, Israeli officials called it off as a ruse. Meanwhile, Israeli forces rescued 4 hostages from Gaza while killing over 200 Palestinians. IDF's massive ground operations in Gaza displaced millions of Gazans, pushing them to the last corner of refuge in Rafah. While Netanyahu makes a controversial trip to the United States, vowing to continue the war until he secures total victory. The ICJ rules Israel's settlement in Gaza and the West Bank as unlawful. Perhaps the most consequential moment in the Israel-Hamas war apart from October 7th occurs. Israel kills Hamas's political chief Ismail Haniyeh in a targeted strike in Tehran, shifting the war into a dangerous new phase. Last month saw the conflict expanding, with Israel now striking Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, targeting their pagers and radios and rigging them with explosives. In a further blow to the group, Hezbollah chief Nasrallah is killed in a barrage of Israeli strikes on Beirut.
In the past 365 days, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza and thousands more in Lebanon, in a war that has changed West Asia forever. As the Israel-Hamas war enters its second year, the clock is ticking for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces varying domestic pressures, from right-wing groups who refuse to participate in ceasefire talks to protests that are demanding hostage release. Meanwhile, his global position continues to decline as he wages a war with no end in sight. Only time will tell what lies ahead for the people of West Asia. Disha Bagchi for NDTV World.
But how has this war impacted the Middle East as a region? It has started off with Hamas in Gaza, then we saw them being assisted by Houthis from Yemen, a country which is very close to Saudi Arabia. And then, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Iran firing ballistic missiles into Israel and the ongoing war with Lebanon. The entire Middle East is now bracing for a wider conflict in the region, because month after month, Israel has been opening a new front, saying that a particular region has got militias which are fighting against Israel. And the occupied territory of Palestine and the government there feels that these militias in different countries are a hostile threat to them, and that is why Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, spoke about that how he is carrying out a 7-front war. Iraqi Shiite militias in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen, Iran as a country, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then also attacks happening in Syria. So the entire neighborhood of the occupied territory of Palestine has been engulfed in this war, which is expanding every day.
Israel is marking the first anniversary of the October 7th Hamas attack that prompted the nation's strongest response in decades. Immediately after the attack, the IDF launched airstrikes and a ground invasion in Gaza aimed at dismantling Hamas that continues to this day. A year later, Israel's war with Gaza has spread, creating a dangerous regional crisis. What began as a localized conflict between Israel and Hamas has transformed into a multi-front war. The involvement of key regional players, notably Iran, has heightened tensions, particularly following its recent ballistic missile strike on Israeli targets. Israel is now facing a war from 7 different fronts. The fighting in Gaza remains one of the most significant fronts. Israeli airstrikes continue to target Hamas infrastructure, while ground operations have led to significant casualties. Meanwhile, 97 out of the 250 Israeli hostages captured by Hamas on October 7th are still held in Gaza, with many feared dead. The initial war between Israel and Hamas has seen major escalation with neighboring countries such as Iran. 6 months into the war, tensions grew between Israel and Iran after Iran rained down missiles on Israel in response to Tel Aviv striking the Iranian consulate in Syria. Hamas's top leader Ismail Haniyeh was also killed in Israeli strikes. Last month, Israel struck Lebanese militant group Hezbollah in an attack that saw around 5,000 pagers and radios detonating. As Israel launched its ground invasion in Beirut, Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets towards Israel. The IDF claims Hezbollah militants have fired over 10,000 rockets across the border since October 8th. Hezbollah strikes have struck deeper into Israeli territory than they have done in any other recent attacks. Schools have closed in many northern areas of Israel, and gatherings have been restricted. The war in Lebanon and Gaza now threatens to spread further after Iran fired nearly 200 missiles at Israel on October 1st. Iran stated that this attack was a response to the killings of Hezbollah leader Nasrallah and Hamas political leader Haniyeh. As tensions continue to rise, both Iran and the international community are preparing for a possible Israeli retaliation in the wake of the massive missile strikes and a fear of a growing regional war. Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
But how has the global leaders and international organizations reacted to this entire development of the last 1 year? Have they managed successfully to stop the war? No. If you see the role of United Nations and other global leaders, they have only issued statements of condemnation, but none of the leaders or organizations have managed to stop this war. There could have been talks of sanctions. World leaders spoke of sanctions against Israel, but they got a pushback. Recently, French President Emmanuel Macron spoke about putting an arms embargo on the occupied territory of Palestine. But then, he was made to eat his words. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that why doesn't French President ask Iran to stop the militias in this region? And with this war of words, the actual war in the Middle East still continues.
Charles de Gaulle, the French military general and statesman, had once said, "Diplomats are useful only in fair weather. As soon as it rains, they drown in every job." Decades later, de Gaulle's words still resonate in the current geopolitical scenario. As world leaders continue to struggle to find common ground over a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. efforts to secure a ceasefire has so far yielded no positive results, as Iran-backed Houthi rebels continue to attack the Red Sea shipping, and now the Israel-Hezbollah conflict threatens to escalate into an all-out regional war.
Each of us has to continue to press all of the parties to make the decisions necessary to get this deal over the finish line. It remains, again, the best way to get hostages home, bring relief to people, and also can help us reduce tensions on other fronts.
Experts suggest that the conflict highlights the limits of U.S. power and influence in the Middle East. Despite being Israel's top arms supplier and a strong ally, U.S. President Joe Biden has failed to change Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's mind. The Biden administration has been trying for a year to help broker an Israeli-Hamas ceasefire deal and free hostages taken by the militants in their October 7th attack last year. US's top diplomat Antony Blinken has traveled to the region nearly 10 times in the past year, and no breakthrough is imminent according to reports. Many U.S. officials have blamed Hamas for failed negotiations, but some also cite Netanyahu's shifting demands. Qatar, a strong regional force, played a big role in earlier ceasefire negotiations, but has not been able to achieve the desired results. With another front opening in the Middle East and Netanyahu in no mood of declaring a ceasefire, the task of achieving a ceasefire in Gaza seems to be a distant reality and shows how diplomacy has failed the region. With Vishal Vivek, Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
A year after the Gaza conflict, the scars of the war is still raw. UNICEF estimates that around 19,000 children have been either left orphaned or have been separated from their families. And these are not just numbers, but the cost of this humanly war.
A year after the Gaza conflict, the scars of war are still raw, especially for the youngest victims. Thousands of children who possibly are unaware of the world beyond their own are now orphaned or separated from their parents and forced to face a tough new reality. In the war-torn streets of Khan Yunis, Najah Al-Ish, a 52-year-old woman, carries the weight of the world in her hands, her 4 orphaned grandchildren.
صحيح كانت سنة قاسية جدا علينا. خلفت لي 4 أيام، يعني أنا قد ما أعطيهم قديش أنا عمرها لقيت 52 سنة. يعني أنا جد خايفة عليهم يعني من الحرب من اللي هم فيه. يعني قد ما ربيت وعيشتهم وكبرت وعملت، يعني أنا مش عايشة لهم، مش ضايلة لهم. ما فيش في إيدي إشي أعمله يعني إلهم. يلا امشي أنت وأنت وراك يلا.
Every day is a battle of survival. In the sweltering heat, they haul heavy containers of water and stand in line for bread, their small hands carrying the burden of a childhood stolen by war. Najah's grandchildren are not the only one fighting through grief. In another corner of Khan Yunis, Amir and Fatima Ashur, aged 12 and 10, watch videos of their home being destroyed.
كلش بتذكر مش قادر انساهم عشان ما شفتهمش لما استشهد ما شفتهمش انه وداهم.
Their parents and 5-year-old brother were killed in the strike. Their grandfather, Atta, now cares for them. But even his love cannot replace the words they long to hear, Mama and Papa.
اصطفاهم مستشهد. أنا بفتخر إنهم استشهدوا. الحمد لله بفتخر إنهم استشهدوا وأنا راضي في قضاء الله. الحمد لله.
Fatima misses the small things, the way her mother would comb her hair, dress her, and help her with her homework. She misses the laughter, the birthday parties, the moments that once made them feel whole.
أمي كانت المشرطة وتلبسنا وتعمل لنا كل حاجة. لما نروح بالمدرسة تقرينا.
Across Gaza, the numbers are staggering. UNICEF estimates that over 19,000 children are either orphaned or separated from their families. These are not just stats, but human cost of the war. These are lives, children forced to grow too fast, haunted by memories of a time when their world wasn't in ruins. NDTV Bureau Report.
For the victims of October 7 attack, life has changed forever. They are carrying the scars of that attack, and be it the agriculture workers, professionals, doctors, engineers, military officials, all those who bore the brunt of this war, are still in shock of what happened on October 7. But they are unanimous in calling that Israel will emerge victorious in this conflict.
You know, all Israel will stand up and get up from this massacre and this disaster that we've been through this whole year.
1 year into Israel's war with Hamas, life in Tel Aviv has returned to a fragile normalcy. But beneath the surface, the trauma and devastation from the conflict still linger. In the heart of the city, a small cafe is offering a beacon of hope for those who have lost so much. This cafe is a lifeline for residents from kibbutzim near the Gaza Strip. People who lost homes, loved ones, and a sense of safety during Hamas's attack last year. Kibbutz Riem, Kibbutz Erez, Kibbutz Be'eri, these names once signified peaceful agricultural communities. Now they are a painful reminder what was taken.
The employees are all from the Otef. Most of them are from Kibbutz Riem. We all want to go back to live in our kibbutz, which we cannot do. So for now, at least we have, a place to work at.
For owner Riyad Kar and her team, working at Cafe Otef is about more than earning a paycheck. It's about rebuilding a sense of purpose in the wake of unimaginable loss.
The war still continues for almost a year, and I feel that if we won't live, we will die. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we must take ourselves out of bed and continue to live and to work and to have like the hope, because without this hope we don't have anything to do here, you know.
Around the cafe, the words "We shall thrive again" serve as a reminder of the community's resolute spirit. The chocolates here are made from the recipes of Dwyer Kap, Roet's ex-husband, who was killed during the attack. The cheese come from Kibbutz Be'eri, where over 100 people were killed and many more were taken hostage.
We will thrive again. This is the slogan of this place. We will thrive again.
But the reminders of the ongoing war and the hostages held in Gaza are never far away. Tel Aviv's squares, at airports, and even on the promenade by the sea, images of the hostages and the fallen are everywhere, with posters that read, "Sorry that we didn't save you." For the people working at Cafe Otef, returning home is still a distant dream. But through Cafe Otef, they have created a space for healing, a place where they can remember those they have lost and hold on to the belief that life can go on. For many Israelis, life has resumed, but with a shadow of fear and grief. There's an undercurrent of sadness that can't be ignored. NDTV Bureau Report.
NDTV is covering this conflict from the war zone and will keep bringing in-depth analysis, ground stories, and the evolving situation updates. So stay tuned and keep watching.